Our next speaker is Megan Iammarino. She is a physical therapist at Nationwide Children's Hospital, and she has been studying VCP patients as part of the Alfano Lab and the nationwide natural history study of VCP for over the last year. So, thank you.
All right, so, and Allison had reached out to ask if we could talk about some kind of physical therapy recommendations that we'd make for specific to VCP disease. A lot of these, I'm going to tell you that none of this is prescriptive. A lot of what we do is provide support to help you maximize your function and to make you kind of the most functional and the most independent as you can be. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another person. We have a lot of people that come into our clinic and say, I need this knee brace. This knee brace works for this person, and I absolutely need it. So we go through the process, and then they get it, and they say, this does not work for me. So I think that's something to always keep in mind. We'll go over some options. We'll go over what the research says, which, surprise, it's not a whole lot. And then we can kind of talk about what that means for you individually. And then Amber's going to talk about a little bit about equipment and her experience with equipment and what she's found that's worked well for her and her family. So this is kind of the general role of what a physical therapist can do for you. We can help you with muscle tightness and range of motion. We can help you with activity recommendations, orthotic prescription and orthotic management. We can help you with identifying mobility devices. And then there's also this whole like pain management and positioning. That kind of is an overarching thing because that seems to be one of the symptoms that come to us is like, I'm having pain in my shoulders. I'm really having really bad pain in my hips and my back. And so we go through these specific other areas to kind of address the pain and the positioning. And so, again, like I said, the goal is to maximize functional independence and then manage change in your body, change in disease presentation with respect and with dignity for you guys. So for joint range of motion, when there's certain parts of your body that are not as strong anymore, the opposite muscle groups are going to get tighter. And that's only because you're not going to be able to move through that full range like you're used to. So if your shoulders are getting weak and it's getting difficult to reach your arms overhead, underneath your shoulders and your traps, everything down here is just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. So it kind of becomes like a cyclic thing. So the tighter you get also, the less you're able to actually move against gravity and stretch. So we like to talk about maintaining joint range of motion, which would look very different for a lot of people. If you're in a chair and you have, we always recommend getting like elevating leg rests that can help stretch out the knees, putting the knees out in front of you, using gravity to kind of help you extend your knees and push it down. We recommend moving through your current range of motion and not pushing towards the end. So we're not trying to stretch anything. We're just kind of moving through your current range of motion regularly. If that means doing that in the water is a wonderful place to do that because you're unweighted. You're able to move through more of a range than you would on land. And I know a lot of people don't like the water, but it is a nice opportunity, it's a nice place to be able to move in a way that you can't in a clinic or at your home. So that's kind of nice. We'd like to talk about if that's not a possibility, sometimes just having someone help stretch you or help move you through your range when you're lying on your back. You can put a towel down, you can lie on your back on your bed and put a towel down and use that to kind of help eliminate some of the friction, and then you're not fighting against gravity, but you're still moving through that range that you have that's available, and that can help keep, kind of the range that you have. And then I put on here serial casting, surgical intervention. That's something we try to avoid at our clinic. Mostly the people that we see in our clinic are young boys with Duchenne that the progression is a little bit more rapid. And I have yet to see anybody from the Cure VCP study that I would recommend CO casting or surgical intervention for anyway. It doesn't seem that contractures are are one of the complaints. So, but that's just on there as a caveat of things we do. So that being said, stretching is kind of like a hot topic in physical therapy in general, and especially in the neuromuscular world. There is a lot of neurologists think we just stretch people, so that's fun. And, but we just go in there and teach them some stretches and then come on out. And I'm like, whoa, okay. But the problem is that if you look at the evidence, and this is the largest body of evidence that we have for stretching, it's a Cochrane review, which means that is the highest level of possible evidence. That's like, it took all of the systematic reviews and everything, and we pulled all of it together. And what it says about stretching in healthy muscle, what it says about stretching in neurologic muscle, what it says, they even have some of like the muscle disease cohorts in there, is that it will not prevent contractures. And so it doesn't say, I'm not saying don't do it. Stretching can feel good. Stretching can release some tension. It can, there are benefits of stretching, but I would not rely on it as a way to prevent any kind of contraction. I think the best thing to do is to, like I said, like move through your range or do like some long duration positioning. Yes?
Can you explain contracture?
Yeah, so contracture is when I'm sorry. Sometimes, yeah, okay. Contracture is when your muscles get so tight or your tendons get so fibrotic and your muscles get so fibrotic that they're no longer able to be as contractile. So if you are, let's say if you sit in a chair and you are in a shortened position in your hamstrings, and you maintain that shortened position in your hamstrings for a long period of time, eventually you're not going to be able to elongate your hamstrings. So that's a contracture, is when the muscle no longer is able to go through its full range and capable range. Did that make sense? So it can feel good, it can decrease pain, and it can provide a feeling of well-being. I'm certainly not saying don't stretch. I'm just saying, as far as if contractures or shortening of your muscles is becoming an issue, I would start to look at more of like long duration positioning and to try to prevent contractures from getting worse. Whoops. So for activity recommendations, kind of just as vague. So it is always going to be, we don't want no activity, but we don't want too much activity. It's going to be a give and take of, we want you to use your muscles so you don't lose your muscles. We don't want disuse atrophy, but we also don't want you to push yourself so hard that you end up overdoing it too much. Like, I'm sorry to call you out, Todd, but like Todd shared yesterday, he said that he was doing a lot of yard work, and he knew that it was a lot of yard work. And afterwards, we had talked, and he said, it really like wiped me out, and I haven't been the same since. So I really think that like listening to your body is a really important thing. And in PT, if you choose to go through PT, I think talking to your physical therapist and having them, they should listen to you. If you are going to a swim program and it becomes too much and it was just too exhausting when you're done, then I think that's really good feedback to give to your therapist and say, that was too much, it wiped me out for the whole rest of the day, and then maybe that means just cutting back on duration or on intensity of the things that you're doing. So in general, we want to do like sub-max activities. I do not recommend pushing until fatigue like a bodybuilder, where you do like reps until you can't do reps anymore. I'm not saying you can't lift weights or you can't use muscles. I would just do low weights, higher reps. Don't push until you are exhausted, until your muscle can't work anymore. And again, let your body guide you. And then in that same vein, exercise is very difficult. Exercise in neuromuscular disease is all of the studies that we have are very underpowered. They're not great. They're very low levels of evidence. It's a hard thing to study because what we know of the mechanisms of specific diseases are that if we push too hard, we could hurt the muscle. So in order to test that, we would have to put people at risk. And that is just not something ethically that we can do. So the studies that we have, there's a couple on cycling and a specific type of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy that also, because the people who enrolled were so few, it's really hard to make any sweeping recommendations from any of them. So what we do is we just recommend getting your body moving in whatever way you like to move it in a safe way. If you like to bike, and a recumbent bike can be nice, or if you like to, even if you like to walking with an assistive device is good. If you like to swim, swimming's great. I think that's also a personal thing, that if you work specifically with somebody who knows you, who knows your likes, who knows your environment that you're in, that they can kind of troubleshoot and come up with a good way for you to keep moving. Orthotics, we do a lot of orthotic management, and these would be things like braces that you put in your legs, or that you put in your shoes, and they help you with walking. I love the carbon fiber AFOs. They have a couple options. So they have an option with a posterior cuff and an anterior cuff, which means the cuff, this part can go in the front here, or it can go in the back here. And if it goes in the front here, it helps with, if you have some quad weakness, it helps limit the forward movement of your tibia. So if you think about it, it's stopping this bone from moving forward, stopping your knee from bending, and helping give it their ground reaction too. So it stores the energy from when you are walking. So it kind of helps put, as you step and as you walk through, not only does it stop your knee from bending, but then it also helps push it back. So if people who have quad weakness, those are actually, they're low profile, and they work nicely. There are some drawbacks. They're not great for everybody. I would always recommend talking to your orthotist and figuring out, sometimes depending on where you are, in your presentation, they can throw you off a little bit. So sometimes it takes a little bit because you're not used to having external forces kind of pushing on you. So it can take some time to get used to, and to figure out if it's right for you. But those I really like a lot. Yes?
Would those manage like a foot drop?
Yes, absolutely. So with the posterior cuff, that manages the foot drop without having that help with the quads, which can be less, just like less invasive. There are, of course, with everything, there are downsides. It's more difficult to go up hills. It's more difficult, like if you're on any kind of an incline, that becomes difficult because they are still like staticky. Yeah. And if you're driving, you have to slip them off before you drive. But those are benefits, and those are options to weigh. Other things are splinting. If you are having some finger flexor weakness or finger extensor weakness, and your finger flexors are having some problems extending the whole way, you can do some splinting at night that keeps that'll keep your finger flexors in an extended position, and keep your hands a little bit more mobile and more dexterous. Like I said, individual prescription is very essential. So what works for one person is not going to work for everybody. I would definitely recommend working with an orthotist. If you go on, if there's something that interests you, if you go on ONP Edge, so orthotist and prosthetics, that's a word. you know what I mean. oandpedge.org or .com, and then they have a tab that says like find someone near you. You type in your zip code and it'll give you every orthotist or prosthetics person within 10 miles, 25 miles of you. So you can go and talk to them and see what they think. Other things, and this kind of goes along the pain management part, is that when muscles get weak, they're not supporting the joints and the bones the way that they were intended to. And so things like shoulder pain, hip pain, back pain, those things are very common. Sometimes just providing a little bit of extra support can be very helpful. So even using like Lycra shorts, if you can't, like just bicycle shorts that provide that extra compression, and off the shelf, like a knee brace, just like something that provides a little bit of extra compression and a little bit extra support, can be very helpful in managing pain, or ankle braces too, just off the shelf from Walmart, ankle braces.
Is that for knee and ankle pain? Is that?
Yes, for knee pain, for ankle pain, yes. There's also, they do make full body or part body. They do these, they're called DMOs, and they're these things up here, and they are custom made. They have them for every part of your body and your whole body. The whole body ones look real interesting to get into. They are tight. They are just like, they provide a lot of support. So while the people who use them do love them, they have a hard time getting into and out of them. But they do provide a lot of really good support, especially in the shoulders. The shoulder joint is very complex. And so, especially in the patients that we see that with like FSHD, facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, where that's their primary muscles that get targeted, they find a lot of relief from using things like that. Again, they're hard to get on, so you would definitely need somebody to help you. But that's an option too. And if you go to, and I can, if anybody's interested, I can just email out these links to you. But Boston O&P is a company that is, I was very excited. They used to only be available in Europe and across the pond, but now they are starting to pop up everywhere, all over. So there's Boston O&P, and they have links for everyone who is certified in customizing these options, and you can go and talk to them and find someone in your area. Knee braces, like I said before, so there are knee extension assist braces. Has anybody ever heard about those? No? Oh, you have? Did you try them?
I haven't.
You have one?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It helped for a while, and then I got a little too weak, I think, and it's no longer doing what it was intended to do.
Yeah. So I think that's the general, and how long did it take you to get it?
It took a while.
Yeah, I think that's the general, like, my feeling about them. Is I have, a handful of people that come in and with this, I really want to get this. This is really going to be helpful. It takes a long time to get through the process, a long time to get through insurance approval, if insurance even approves it.
They said they were going to approve it, then they denied it after I bought it.
Fun. That's insurance. Yeah, that is infuriating. But after all of that, you get it, you wear it for a while, and then it just doesn't end up doing very much, and it's a piece of something that sits in a corner.
But some of these other things, the like shorts and tops are a lot quicker and easier and cheaper to get.
These, I've had people that have had those, the Lycra tops, the DMOs covered by insurance. I think it depends on your insurance. If you're on like Medicaid, it depends on the state that you're in. It depends on a whole bunch of different stuff. But the people who like them and find relief from them end up using them frequently.
If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you a mic.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to cover this or not. Have you started to look into like the semi-exoskeletons from Rewalk and Wandercraft? Two companies I've looked at that have mostly for physical therapy and skeletal issues, but I think it could very much apply to people with our condition as well. Is there any progress on that, and has your clinic specifically taken a look at that?
So would those be like walking devices?
Yeah, they're kind of like the braces, but motorized and everything. I mean, it's not quite Ironman level, but
It looks, I've seen videos. I mean, they look pretty cool. Our clinic has not had any experience with them, or with using them. I think I could reach out to some of my friends who work in spinal cord injury. I know that is like kind of, I think, the target audience for those, but I agree that if they're beneficial, they would work well for you. I would say that we work with robotic arms in our Duchenne clinic, and it's really, so we do a trial with a child. And I don't know, and Amber, I'm sure you had something. Well, there we go. For the robotic arm, from our experience, and this is just limited to who I've seen and worked with, the kids get very excited because they're able, it's a robotic arm that comes and attaches, and they're able to feed themselves again and do other tasks. And it's really exciting the first time they have it, and they like it for a little bit, but then it just ends up not being able to provide to them what they expected it to provide. So again, another piece of equipment that kind of,
like a
From
treadmill.
our-
It's
like
the
what?
foam- like a treadmill that you start using, but then becomes a coat rack after a while.
yep, like all the equipment in my house, yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious if it'd be interesting to have your opinion, since you've got so much experience with people with VCP, what your thoughts on those and the feasibility.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I will have to get back to you because I have nothing to go from now, but I will look into it a little bit more, and I will definitely reach out.
Cool.
And we can talk about it. And then this is very quick because Amber's going to take over. But for mobility devices, there's a lot of different, you don't have to have like a full power chair. There's lots of different scooter options. There's a lot of different things that will and will not be covered by insurance. If you're looking at options, you can always go to find a vendor in your area, like New Motion or National Seating and Mobility are two of the big ones. And they have floors that you can go and look around on their floors and see what they have and try some of the stuff that they have. Regarding when to start using one, I think a lot of the concerns that I've heard are that if I start using a chair, then I will stop walking sooner. And I want to say that I do not believe that has ever happened. What I think a chair or a mobility device does provide is an opportunity for you to rest and for you to not get so fatigued, so that when you're going to do activities that you really want to do, when you want to go to the zoo with your kids, when you want to go wherever, you get to enjoy being there and not spend all of your energy getting there. And so I do not personally, I mean, I don't use one, but I don't see a downside. I think they can be pretty supportive in kind of getting through your day, and I don't think that it means that it's going to progress you quicker.
Yeah, I was talking to Tom a little bit about that, and you could comment on this. He just said that it really helps with his pain level.
Yeah.
Because standing or walking or standing for a long time increases his pain, and if he has some mobility, then the pain isn't so bad. So I didn't think about it being used to prevent pain.
Yeah.
So that was I wanted to bring that point up and see if you had anything more to add to that.
Yeah, I think everything we do is in an attempt to decrease pain, because pain is really so enmeshed in like quality of life that whatever options we give, we want to make sure that we are kind of supporting you in that area too. And also if it's hard to get up from a chair, raising your toilet seat. They're very cheap. You can get something that you just put on the toilet and it just raises it a good like foot, and it makes it easier to get up and down. It's not a huge thing. And I saw they had grabbers out there, which I love. They have grabbers with little magnetic things on them so you can get your keys when you drop them. So, yeah, that is time for Amber.
Real quick, one more question.
Oh,
Yeah, regarding the braces, like I'm having a lot of neck weakness. Is there any particular brace that could help kind of correct that or help in any way?
are you having neck pain?
It's just weakness. Like I have a big head, so it's like balancing a bowling ball on a pencil.
So the one thing about braces is that they're great. They do a good job of supporting. If you're starting to use them in that manner to kind of support because you have weak muscles, what that actually does is then have your muscles turn off and rely on the neck brace. And so in instances, it can make those muscles that you're trying to support even weaker, or because you're just not using them as much. Same thing with TLSOs, which are something where it's like a whole body shell that are used in our kids who have spinal muscular atrophy. For years, somebody saw somebody with SMA and they were like, throw them in a TLSO. And it was kind of like, well, but now let's think about this, because if we're doing that, then all you're doing is making the trunk muscles weaker. So light strengthening or lightweight, like mobility exercises for your neck might be what's best.
Is there anything that can help with like posture wise? Like, because I think that's, I have a pretty sedentary lifestyle now. So, and sitting at the computer and all of that, like my neck just naturally leans forward. Is there anything that can help with like the, positioning or posture?
Are you usually sitting in the scooter that you're in now?
No, when I'm at home, I have a regular chair, like an office chair that I sit in.
Providing lumbar support, providing a good back support. All right.
I have thoughts on that. Amazon actually sells like a clip-on headrest that you can move from one chair to the next. So if you're even in a travel mobility kind of fold-up scooter, you can clip it on and it has some head support. So I really like those. They're pretty adjustable, but I think they're relatively inexpensive on Amazon.
Yeah, I just find like a normal headrest, I feel like it's pushing me more forward. So like I'm always having to put chairs like in a recline mode just to actually sit straight.
Yeah, these you can change the angle of them.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry.
Here, pass this back to
Katie, there is another Facebook group from the Myositis Association, and Joe Sanchez had, like, his head was dropping, and through physical therapy, he strengthened it, and he showed the before and after pictures, and it was amazing. So again, maybe working with a physical therapist, they can give you the exercises to do to strengthen the neck muscles.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I would like to say that physical therapists are awesome. Not all of them are necessarily trained to work with people with neuromuscular conditions. So if there's ever any kind of question, I know we work very closely with you guys. Our whole team, PT team, is happy to work with your local physical therapist to come up with a plan and at least just talk about things to avoid, areas to target, things like that. So we are always here to help support you guys in that. So just feel free to reach out.
Amber, you mentioned about the correct position, the back. Is 90 degrees is the correct position?
Depends.
You provide the support of the back.
Yeah, I think a lot of that depends on, it's going to be really individualized. The length of your hamstrings, the position you're sitting in, kind of, I think having your local therapist kind of look at what available range you have before we say that there's like a one perfect position.
Okay.
Sorry, that's
Okay,
very
thank you.
vague. That's what we do, is vague.
So Megan. So did you helped Lindsay with the standard of care, right?
Yes.
Did you? Okay. There is a physical therapy version that we need to publish that's much longer than the section in the standard of care. I'm just putting a, do you think that that would possibly be a good resource for their physical therapists so that they're not thinking about rehabilitation at physical therapy versus dealing with a progressive neuromuscular condition?
I think so. I do. I also don't, I hate to be Debbie Downer, but we have standards of care and physical therapy recommendations for a lot of different diseases and types and people that we see. And it would be wonderful if they read it. So yes, it would be very helpful if they read it. If they don't want to read it, talking to somebody is a good idea. But yes, I think it would be a great resource.
This community would take it to their physical therapist
I
and
love
make
that.
them
Yeah.
read it.
Make them sit down in front of you and read it. Yes. Ooh, read it to them. I like that.
So when my dad was going through all of this and he would go to physical therapy, the insurance companies would stop paying after he plateaued. So, of course, you do these little, bumps up, you improve a little bit, and then you plateau, and then it was cut off. Have there been changes in that now, or are there new policies for people who have diseases where you are going to plateau, but if you don't maintain and continue with PT, you're gonna go back down again? Instead of playing this game.
So something that was mentioned yesterday about the MDA recognizing VCP disease as a neuromuscular condition. I think that is an important step. The PT model absolutely is episodic care. So you go for a certain number of visits and then, you can't anymore. And then if that's the case and if that's all your insurance company will provide for you in a year, you can plan ahead with that PT and get a good home exercise program. Get something good that you can follow until you're able to have another evaluation and regain activities as well. So I think that's something to plan for. But we do have certain diagnoses that have lifelong PT, and part of it is because we have the support of the MDA and things like that. So.
I did want
A
to,
good PT will also know not to write goals that have this kind of terminal point. They're going to recognize that they need to write little baby step goals. And if they're not, then have a conversation about that. Independence with your own home exercise program could be a goal. And if you're not independent with that, or if they're adding things to it, you're not reaching that goal. So there's some baby steps along the way that they should be working through.
Ways to play the system.
Yes.
I did want to clarify something, because I think Dr. Mosafar said it yesterday that the MDA does not recognize VCP. That's not correct. We're actually listed on the MDA page. It's Treat NMD that we are not recognized, which we have Lindsay as our weapon now that's going to, help us with that. But yeah, the MDA, we're listed on the page unless something changed in the past year or two. But
Okay, well, that's a great
it's under VCP disease.
resource.
Yeah, you can find the disease in the whole listing of diseases, but Treat NMD which is more European, will not list us because it's multi-system. So they said we're not a true neuromuscular disease, but we're working on that.
I
So
would argue that most neuromuscular diseases are multi-system. Interesting.
If you are on the MDA site, it's listed under VCP myopathy. It was our workaround. They wouldn't say VCP disease, but they would say VCP myopathy. And then it actually links to our website.
And I just wanted to say that another way to get around this when your PT runs out, as I know my place, then I switched to OT, and then that got me extra sessions. So just working between PT and OT can extend it.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's on. It's on. Just go ahead, just start talking.
Do you consider the stretching and training functionality more important than train with weights?
I didn't hear the first part.
Do you consider the stretching and train with functionality more important than train with weights in the physiotherapy sections?
I feel like it just depends on what your goals are. I think both can be important. I think, you know, like moving through your current range, maintaining the mobility that you currently have, and functional strengthening is, I think, a better target than like doing bicep curls.
Because I have this doubt. In the beginning, the doctors recommended to not use the weights. But I don't know nowadays what's the recommendation. Of course, there's no excessive weights to use, of course, because the muscle can fatigue it. But, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah, there are non-weights. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
There are other things too, instead of weights, that you could use, like the stretchy exercise kind of bands. Those are really relatively inexpensive, and they don't overload the muscle in the same way that traditional resistance training does. So that might be a good option too.
Okay.
All right, let's let Amber go ahead and do your presentation. Does that work? Or go through your slides? Yeah.
Sure. These slides we threw together right after lunch. So we kind of pivoted what we were going to talk about. So at lunchtime, I had a good conversation about some fear that I'm hearing around equipment, when to use equipment, kind of a stigma that's associated when you do have to start using equipment. And so I just wanted to share kind of our family's experience with using a wheelchair, using some of these things. And I think it started, I felt the weight of this more than my son. I felt like getting his first wheelchair was this huge loss. He's losing his independence. But when we went for his wheelchair fitting, he suddenly found this independence. And I saw this personality of him come through that I'd never seen before. And I didn't realize how much he was really holding back. You know, the things that he didn't participate in school, I kind of assumed maybe he wasn't interested in recess, or maybe he's not a sportsy kid, or, but that all sort of changed when he got his first wheelchair and he was suddenly able to keep up with kids. And I realized that those were my fears that were holding him back. And the things that I felt like were inhibiting him, this aid or this assistive device, to him really represented freedom. So I just wanted to share a couple of pictures. You know, when I was at the airport, I had plenty of time because my flight was delayed, and I finished this book. And one of the last lines of this book I read was, "In a sea of grief, there are islands of grace." And so for us, it's different from VCP disease, but we have this sort of anticipatory grief in our lives all the time as well. And seeing little islands of grace, like this track chair that we got my son, we live near the beach, represents so much freedom for him. He can drive in the sand, he can go on a trail, just all of these little things that I probably delayed too long in getting him a power chair, but it just represents freedom to him. So I just want to share that with you guys. This is another activity he participated in for a little while, was power soccer. And I know that's probably not something you're interested in. Maybe it is. There were men in their 30s on his team, all sorts of varying disabilities. I cried because he had never kicked a ball until this. This happened this year. He kicked a ball. That was amazing to me. So while we generally think of wheelchairs and assistive devices as representing a loss of something, it's ultimately not. It's freedom. It's freedom. So I've seen a couple of these around this week. This was the first chair that we started with. This is what I recommend to a lot of families because it can be pretty cumbersome to purchase a wheelchair accessible vehicle. They're pricey and they can be, difficult to navigate. They're very low to the ground, and so you have to get one. A lot of families try and avoid them. This is a pretty good option, though. It's nice because they fold up. You can see on the right, they fold up into pieces. They can, pretty easily go in a car, but I also recognize that you need a care partner or someone who can help you lift it in the car. They do make a couple of like storage kinds of, my mind's drawing a blank. Trailer, yeah, that works. Trailers that you can carry them around with. They even make some that fit inside of a trunk that has like a lift on it, clips on it, and it will actually kind of crank it up into your trunk. The downside is that you do still have to, walk from the trunk around to get in the car. But there are plenty of options. More freedom. I just wanted to share. He's ice skating. He's ice skating, you guys. When his school first told us we were ice skating, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, shoot, it's one more thing that we can't do. And he was like, why? Why can't we do it? So, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. And it was great. He loved it. So this is a robotic arm. It's kind of like a partial robotic arm that we had tested. He hasn't brushed his teeth on his own in many years. So there are several different types of these, and I think Megan hit the nail on the head. It's a little bit of kind of this new, it seems like such a great idea when you get it. They can be $50,000. That's a pretty average cost. Insurance doesn't cover them often, but a lot of patients really do like them. They have some that are kind of this assist, so they provide partial assistance. You provide some of the assistance. They have some that are completely robotic. That have kind of like looks like a two-finger kind of grasp. They rotate, they can open doors, a lot of options there. Oh, and his Lego house is there because he can no longer put the Lego on top of the house, but he put his Lego guy up there, so that was kind of fun. So that's it as far as slides. I'm happy to answer questions and talk about mobility devices. One of the questions that we chatted through over lunch was, when should we start considering mobility devices? And I work with Duchenne families, and I tell my Duchenne families that as soon as your limitations are changing the way you do things, like I don't go to that grocery store anymore because it's too far to park and walk, or it's too large, or if it's changing, somebody has to drop you off at the entry, you should be thinking about it then. That's my best guess. I saw a question somewhere.
Well, not really a question. I just wanted to talk about the kind of freeing nature of getting a power chair or a scooter. My dad had VCP disease, didn't know that he had it, but he lived in his own home for a long time, and then when he was unable to continue living at home, he moved to the veterans home in Iowa, and he walked in. Not well, but he walked in. And shortly after that, he started using a power chair, and he got his freedom. He started going from one end of town clear to the other end of the town. He'd be gone all day. He'd go shopping. He'd come and yell at me at my bedroom window to wake me up in the morning. He'd go to the parade and his battery would die, so he'd have to call somebody to come rescue him. He was the mailman at the veterans home. He drove around and sold gummy bears for St. Jude. He met with politicians. He was the resident council president. He got married. He did all the things because he had this new freedom to do so. And he was always kind of, he was the strong guy, and he was always kind of embarrassed, and he didn't want to lose his independence. But he came to a point where he realized, like, I can do this. Like, this is cool. And because of that, I think it didn't take his life away, it gave it back to him.
Yeah. You know, the one thing my son said after we got his chair, you know, I was kind of like feeling him out, like, how are you feeling about this? And he was like, I don't have to worry about falling anymore. And that was huge. I mean, just that relief. I didn't know he was carrying that.
Yeah.
Did you have something? No.
Any additional questions? Anybody?
I'm happy to chat with anybody if you have specific, you know, questions about devices or wheelchairs or scooters or things like that too later.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Megan. These practical tips for how people can live and move and have freedom in spite of this disease is super helpful. So thank you for offering yourself and your wisdom to our patients.